Salt and Sanctuary is exactly the type of game you get if you cross Dark Souls with a 2D side-scroller. The Dark Souls similarities are uncanny. You've got the dark, gothic, horror-like settings, check. You've got the big, badass bosses who want to rip you limb from limb, who can only be stopped by being vanquished, check. You've got the random messages on the floor which a lot of the time don't make a lot of sense, check. And of course there's the XP system, only this time around XP is called Salt. Leveling up can only be done at certain locations, in this case at places called sanctuaries. If you so happen to die before reaching a sanctuary, then all of your unspent salt is dropped. You've then got one life and one opportunity to recover it, but die again and it's gone for good. So saying that this game is like Dark Souls, or Bloodborne for that matter, is really an understatement. After creating a character, you start off at sea. You're part of a royal guard that is tasked with protecting a princess. The princess is the final hope of bringing peace to a war-torn land. But disaster strikes and your boat is attacked by pirates, and for some reason Cthulhu. After getting your ass handed to you, you wind up on a beach in a gloomy looking land with no mission on your mind other than revenge, and saving the princess. But mainly revenge. The game starts off relatively easy, with you slicing apart your enemies in a glorious display of blood and gore. But in true Dark Souls fashion, the difficulty soon starts to ramp it up. As you explore the large and interconnected world, you soon have to face off against bosses who you must defeat in order to earn keys and gain access to new areas. There are elements of a Metroidvania game here, when you get branded and earn special environmental moves. But I think that this is where the game dropped the ball a bit. I think it missed a golden opportunity. Let me explain. I get that despite being 2D, the game chose to mainly focus on the combat rather than the platforming, which is fine. There are the odd jumping parts, even the traditional disappearing block mechanic makes an appearance, but other than that, this really is all about the fighting. However, having these Metroidvania moves, such as being able to defy gravity and flip upside down, would have made for an awesome twist to your standard boss fight. What if, soon after unlocking this ability, you had to fight a boss that had alternating weak points above and below him, so you'd have to keep switching between the floor and the ceiling in order to win? It would have been an awesome idea if some of these moves that you unlock could have been incorporated in to work alongside the combat, and not just as a way of getting from one area to the next. It would have created a nice gameplay mix that took advantage of the 2D perspective, and most importantly, did something different that Dark Souls couldn't. The bosses do all come with their own set of attacks, and they can take a bit of time to master, but essentially, they all just come down to dodge, block, counter. The boss called the Tree of Men was by far one of the more interesting encounters, because this did actually involve some carefully timed jumping, but that was about it. There are some original ideas though. For example, rather than just being your typical respawn save points, the sanctuaries are actually customizable. When you find a new one, you have to claim it in the name of whichever religion you're currently following. Then, you can make offers at the altar to create new facilities such as blacksmiths or guides. Not only do these act as shops, but they also have little buffs attached to them, like for example, you'll earn more salt in the surrounding area. You've got a limited number of offerings, so you have to decide which sanctuaries would be the most beneficial to upgrade. The leveling up system is done on a skill tree. When you level up, you earn a black orb, which you can then place in a slot adjacent to any other skill that you've already earned. The tree looks impressive, but unfortunately most of these slots are just something simple, like an extra point of dexterity or strength or will, or they simply allow you to access the next level of items or spells. Unfortunately, there's no new moves and no perks. When you begin the game, you choose a class. This class then dictates where on the skill tree you begin. So, in the long run, your initial choice of class doesn't make that much of a difference. You can play as whatever type of character you want. The skill tree is the same every time. There's a lot of room for customizing your character, from their clothes to their weapon loadouts to their rings to their magic spells. All clothing and weapons are upgradable at the blacksmith, so you're free to stick with your favourite weapons without having to worry about them becoming too weak. But I will say this, I found that some of the gear was far superior to the others. I ended up using, for example, this pumpkin head for most of the game, simply because it was so much better than anything else I had. I could have spent salt to try and upgrade other items so that they would have matched the pumpkin, but that seemed like a waste, so I ended up playing with a vegetable on my head for most of the game. There are a few other little nitpicks that I had. I don't like how the enemies don't have health bars, so you can never tell if you're actually making progress at defeating them, or just wasting your time simply tickling a far superior enemy. And I don't like how the heal item doesn't have its own dedicated quit button. Instead, it has to be scrolled across to and then selected. But despite all this, if you're a fan of challenging 2D action games, or a fan of the Dark Souls series, then I think you'll probably enjoy this. So check out Salt and Sanctuary, and as always, thanks for watching.